Welcome to Reflections, a program where we discuss values and virtues for the transformation of the individual and the society in general. I am Father George Ehusani, and I have with me in the studio once again our friend, Professor Okey Ikechukwu. It's quite a while since you came here. It's like 10 years.
No, not so.
Since after the last elections,
actually,
you have not been here. It's a very lot. That's why I say it's almost 10 years. I know many Nigerians have aged. In the period between the last time you came here and now, many Nigerians have aged
by 10 years
yes.
from suffering, I guess.
From suffering, but you are looking plumpy.
No. Change your glasses.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I think between then and now, we had our think tank meeting only once. And so much has been happening in the country, I must say. So much has been happening. We did a lot of work before the elections, trying to get a better country, trying to get better quality leadership, trying to get better citizenry, more alert, more civic, a citizenry with heightened civic sense of heightened civic responsibility, heightened sense of civic responsibility. Yes. So where are we now? How far would you say ourselves and other civil society organizations, the work the Development Specs Academy does, your own outfit, how far would you say that we are succeeding in going towards the Nigeria of our dream and the Nigeria we have been working for?
I believe we're making progress.
We're making progress. That's good news.
You know, you must measure progress against the background of where you are. Usually we blame people in public office, highly visible people, for the damage around us. We forget that if I'm contesting elections today and I want to rig elections, I'll not be the one to carry the ballot box. I'll pay people.
Yes.
It's mostly young people who carry the ballot box. So for them to agree to do that for 20,000, it must mean that they are not sufficiently enlightened to know what's in their interest. It must mean that what their religion and religious leaders have been teaching them has not been entering their psyche, but it's been entering their ears.
Or they have not been. Or the leaders have not been teaching well.
Yes. Or the leaders have been teaching them about prosperity. Get any money, no matter the amount, it doesn't matter from where,
and
bring it. Once I bless it, the Almighty God has also blessed it. So you see that these people, on the pretext of preaching morality, religion and spirituality, are increasing the population of criminals.
Actually, to be fair, many of them do not pretend to be preaching morality. Many do not pretend to be preaching morality.
They'll tell you we're here to make money.
Yeah.
Then you look at the school system, then you look at the traditional institutions. So you find that the basic framework for driving values are damaged. To that extent, the youth are in trouble. But going to the kind of work we've done, yes, the think tank, you took time to assemble very enlightened, committed, and responsible Nigerians. Each person, after the meetings, will go to operate within his own area of relevance and influence. And part of it included going to other states and all of that.
You went to Anambra, yes, and Imo and Enugu.
Ebonyi, 4 states even, you know. Yes. So why do I say we are progressing? A very damaged society does not change in one day, does not change in 1 hour. It changes progressively as the consequences of misconduct begin to trickle in. Yes, we've lived with a lot of impunity. Today, as we speak, there's a former governor who has been declared wanted. He was being investigated by the EFCC. He was due to be arraigned. Not only did he not make himself available, but a serving governor, the one who took over from him, came with reinforcements and prevented his arrest.
Is that not a new law in our political or corruption trajectory? Is that on a new law? Because former governors are very visible people.
Yes. It's a new law, but it's at the level of political illiteracy of the governor who went to remove him. this is the Federal Republic of Nigeria, not a local government in your state. You came with state apparatus to the federal capital to prevent the arrest of somebody who...
To prevent the state from arresting
carrying out his function. So already I think the governor really is going to have quite a bit of heat after this. So you look at all of that. But a few months ago, about a year ago, this person who is now declared wanted was more powerful than the emperor, Napoleon in his state.
Yeah.
So why do I say we're making progress? People are also seeing what's happening now. Very few will learn immediately. But
because it's actually a very powerful lesson.
Very
that
powerful
this person
lesson.
who looked invincible a year ago, this person who was an emperor, and everybody feared.
And let's even stretch it into the details. Before he left office, he replaced local government chairpersons. So he put people who will be loyal to him. Before he left office, less than a month, he built the former governor's lodge within government's house, which means he wasn't going anywhere. Everybody who was anybody, any office, including traditional institutions, he colonized by putting his own people there. In other words, it had become a hereditary title. He has put the governor, as people allege, and all of that. A lot of people were excited to be on his side. It's now our business to, quote and unquote, chop in this state any resource that comes in. Now, what it means that with his likely prosecution, there will be a dismantling of a whole lot of things.
Superstructure of
people. And that's why my optimism is not based on the reality of the moment, but on the projection.
So what happened a few days ago? What happened signals some upturning.
Some, yes, upturning in one instance, but several others will follow, and some are following at different levels. So that's why I want, a lot of the people who are excited today, saying good for him, if you look closely, they were either facilitators or beneficiaries as well. So the entire society needs a rebirth, and these things are instrumental repercussions.
That is, your optimism is based on the fact that you believe that Nigerians are learning from this. And I'm asking myself, are my brothers and sisters really learning that somebody that was your excellency yesterday, today is declared wanted like a common criminal?
And
are my brothers, and it's running, are my brothers and sisters really learning from it?
Let me tell you why I think they're learning. Sometimes a lesson is taught and you copy your note and all of that. Sometimes circumstances hammer the lesson into you. You've been given money to fix your roof. You didn't. You used it to drink. Then heavy rains come, heavy winds come. And the damaged roof allows water to leak in and damage a full bag of gari you have.
If it is only gari, damages your
part of your
certificate.
TV is gone. One of them even landed on your child. Now that child is crippled. That's the kind of lesson that will come to Nigerians. That as you watch consequences, you tell yourself, your neighbor is seeing what has happened to you. He's one of those given money. He will not go and drink with it.
Because he's watching what has happened to you.
Because when you look, the youths are in trouble because they have mostly the wrong examples everywhere. Mm-hmm. And therefore, the days of preaching, when you talk about trying to convert, you gather, you do a rally for children, for the youth, the leaders come to speak. Nearly all the leaders are speaking. The youths know they are not honest people. They know they are criminals. They know their means of livelihood is questionable. And so,
talking about the youth, this is one of the critical things I wanted us to share. You are a philosopher. What is called the psyche of the young people? The framework of their minds. You can have people traumatized on various levels. And I'm looking at the kind of trauma that is happening to our young people at the level of the psyche. 9, 10, 11-year-old children, the kind of children that used to go and queue up to line up to welcome a governor. You are talking of 9, 10, 11-year-old children who yesterday were saying, Your Excellency, the flower girl that is going to carry flower to give to the visiting governor, the visiting minister, and so on and so forth. Then just 1 month after, that same personality is paraded or is alleged to have stolen billions and is being declared wanted, what will be happening in the psyche of the young people exposed to this contradiction, this major existential contradiction?
For me, it is what I call willy-nilly education. It also happened when we were growing up. I'll tell you, secondary school, my school was very good. But by the 4th year, discipline had collapsed. As far back as 40-something years ago, teachers were beginning to have affairs with students. Secondary school. So, for some of us knowing the ideal, so we were shocked. And we tried to form a group to counter it. What point am I making? That experience was part of what led me to realize that. Because when we formed the group, we called it a panel of buddies, trying to restore discipline. Even though in class 4 we were not prefects, we began to enforce the school rules. If it's time for siesta, we wouldn't allow you to be outside. We ignored the prefects. Those who were bringing their food to the hostel to eat, we prevented it. And for some reason, the principal was a very experienced old man. He didn't interfere. Now, that idealism, let's have it back. We went on, but within 2 weeks, even by the beginning of the 2nd week, some members, because we were 12, began to use that opportunity for impunity. Some would then go and take more food than they deserve from the dining hall.
The people who started off wanting to instill discipline
together. Then some will punish. Now, some of them, in one instance, was actually terrorizing one junior girl to become the girlfriend. And then he hit me. Philosophically, who is qualified to lead others? The person who can force them to do what he wants, or the person who has integrity. And so we set up a review. We say some members of the panel of body were going. It was a life-changing experience for me, because that's what then made me begin to look for knowledge. How could those we sat down and agreed with that, look, this is what we need to do? So it then turned out, and it hit home to me, that idealism is not enough. The reality of what's inside people will come out. So now you have youth who are going through the same thing. Actually, for me, for many of them, that's their path to maturity for leadership. They look with horror. This man, and I liked him. I like how he talks. And oh no, when he comes to rallies, he says he loves the youth. Now that inner awakening, if you think through history, whether in the clergy or in politics or in traditional institutions all over the world, it is people whose psyche has been rattled.
But I hope you know it can go either way.
It can produce terrible people.
It can produce terrible people because they have been mentored in the wrong way,
yes.
Or it can challenge. That's what you are talking about.
Yes.
It can challenge people to bring the best out of them.
Yes, to seek understanding, to think of development. You know, there was a conversation I had with somebody in public office whom I asked to tell me the value of 2 SUVs, how it facilitates his work, since he actually doesn't use it, except in Abuja, and both are bulletproof. He sat down for a long time. He said, okay, you know, if you didn't ask this, it would have occurred to me that I shouldn't have gotten these vehicles. I will sell it. I said, are you sure? He said, I will get clearance. It doesn't belong here. This is more than 250 million that government didn't need to spend. You know, many people don't realize that. Waziri Adio was the past secretary for NAITI, Nigerian Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. Waziri got in. You know, he is a medium and decent, responsible fellow, core professional. So he saw a list of the things he needed. They bought him an iPhone, a laptop, so many other things. He said, why did you buy these things? He said, no, that's what your
predecessor.
That's what you
are entitled to.
Thank you. That was the word. They commissioned, I think, a new portrait
of him.
Yes, clearly, you know, it will not be less than between 500 and 2 million to be hung and all that. He said, first of all, I don't need a new phone. He said, sir, listen, go and return this thing. I have a laptop, I have a phone, I have a tablet. Waziri didn't take it. He got them to write another memo, and he didn't take those things. He said there's no need to spend money on his picture. That this is a workplace. If his picture is not there, what happens? This is real. You know, these are paradigms that need to be given visibility. Like you say, the youths are substantially damaged at various levels, and all the leaders of pillars of value have also collapsed.
Am I talking about oasis of sanity amidst this sea of corruption?
Bedlam, actually.
Yes. You know, Luke's Terra has been running this integrity project, and we are working on now bringing our models of integrity. We identified 48 people, men and women, Christians and Muslims from across the country, Southerners and Northerners, 48 people who, like the Waziri Adio you are talking about, who have demonstrated a measure of integrity in their lives, private and public. And then we are showcasing them to the world, and particularly to our young people. And my concern is that young people who are living their lives on social media have the impression that our generation is finished. That corruption is in our very character, in our very makeup. To bring out these people and say, no.
They're not like that.
It's not like that.
But there's something that should be added.
Yes.
We should start by pointing out to the young people two things. The youths got us independence. The youths destroyed this country. That's the part they don't connect.
Yes.
The first set of youth were enlightened youths who understood three things: development, national interest, how to live together despite differences.
And they include the Nnamdi Azikiwe, they include Ahmadu Bello, they will include the Enahoros, Anthony Enahoros,
from all over the country.
From all over the country.
Now,
then they went to school. Many of them studied. Many of them had, Awolowo, and so they had law degrees, they had whatever degrees,
and then they understood the role of leadership in the life of people.
They watched colonialists or the government in the US, the government in Britain.
No. This is what we ought to have. But look at the second set of youths.
Then the majors.
Impunity. They had no understanding of politics or policy or the state. They had no understanding of even the institution they were in. So they were driven, quote unquote, by patriotism, but they had no understanding.
Blind passion.
Of the environment. So they struck. And many of them, then there was, first of all, the action was terrible. Then there was retaliation. It was no longer about Nigeria.
The was not properly coordinated.
It was no longer about Nigeria. It was no longer even about the military. It was division began. What then happened? That population, if you what they call the class of 66, remained dominant in national consciousness until they grew old, until today. And so the youth looking say, these are the old people.
Forgetting
what they need to realize is
that they struck
as young people, and lacking knowledge.
And that Gowon got married as a head of state.
Yes, he was still a boy. So, and you see, that's the problem they are having, thinking that biologically young age translates into the ability to do the right thing. And I'll use the example of NSAS, which I've used several times, and I think even in our private discussions. NSAS is celebrated as one clear proof of how the young can make Nigeria a wonderful place. You look at the number of people who attended. They were fed regularly throughout.
And young people donated.
With a small amount of money. And they're telling you, do you know?
You see, this is how we can coordinate.
This is how we can coordinate and run this country. But they speak out of ignorance, and I'll tell you why. You can't run Nigeria from a toll gate. There are entrenched interests that will take you out of town. And that toll gate incident was not by Nigerian youth. It was by elite Nigerian youths. People who had a bath, wore a good pair of jeans, wore clean shirts. And when there was food to be shared, they didn't fight over it. The typical Nigerian youth under the bridge.
No. While that was happening, there were other set of Nigerian youths in other parts of Lagos who were looting.
The real, because they constitute the majority.
Yes.
So the mistaken assumption that the enlightened youth population, internet penetration, you can speak all that English. Let any of them go to their village and tell me what people do with their phones other than calls. How many of them know their peers? So you then find that, yes, but they must be educated on their vulnerabilities so that they know how to intervene. Imagine that during that NSAS, which involved hundreds of young people, that 7 area boys joined them, came to disturb it. You know it would have ended. They would have run for their lives. They're not used to violence.
But precisely that is what happened.
That's what happened eventually. So what am I leading up to? The progressive assumption and emergence of the illusion that the youths are just some angels waiting to take over. Ask yourself, those of them who are working with the older generation, what are their reflexes? They're making demands. Those of them who are running youth programs, how are they treating those working for them? You know, being that I work very closely with them, you marvel. The very same reflexes of screaming, where is my bag? The person will even be kneeling down. Now, the person is kneeling down is about 29. The person is kneeling down for is 32. That's the future you're going to have. And that brings me to the models of integrity. And that's also part of where my concern is. Many of the models of integrity, and when you speak about personal integrity, flawless personal integrity, have very limited capacity for sustained mentoring other than addressing. We went to a school in Enugu, spoke to individual students who could have gone. We could have gone there. You give a lecture, we'll get up and go away. Why did we remove our top coat and we're moving around? In one class, remember that lesson? We came in, they stood up. The noise of the wooden desk. They had gotten used, that's the way school operates. Yes. We took time to explain to them, lift it so it doesn't scratch.
So that it doesn't scratch.
Because it can be, for them to stand up, we hear all over the place. Those are the things that are not happening. Many of our models of integrity are used to speaking in auditorium.
Not going to the grassroots.
Not going to the grassroots.
The rough and tumble. And
yes. And then, you have an audience and they tell you, and they have integrity at the level of everywhere they've engaged. But look at it this way. In that auditorium you're speaking, more than 80% of the people are people like you and I. Now, when it's only young people that are being addressed, you've made a good speech. They'll come out, oh, sir, that was good. I want to be your mentor. I have their names as your mentees. How are you mentoring them? You see, that's the part.
I mean, clearly, we need mentoring is a major challenge, clearly. Deliberate mentoring.
Conscious.
Yes.
Just another very quick point on that. I was telling you about a school I went to 2 days ago. Now, I identified 5 as students are graduating from WAEC, from secondary school.
Yes.
They need to be ushered into a life outside regimented academic learning for them to be conscious you're getting into society. As you're leaving school now, nobody's going to ask you to wake up by 5. You can no longer tell lies and get money from your parents. You're going to meet boredom if you're not used to being useful, etc., etc. That orientation helps them. So this whole mentoring thing, I think there's a growing population of people of integrity whose interventions are at the superstructural level. Assuming they are also doing a TOT. Listen, where are you from? This sort of thing. You were talking about him and the rest of it. You do it, I do it. Okay. Let's get in touch with all the youth leaders in your community. A traditional ruler. And you go there and you have a session for youth leaders. There could be 40. And it's not just this thing. You have those youth leaders of the various churches, youth leaders of the various community or political parties, youth leaders and market leaders, and you begin to put that, listen, if a stranger comes into this town, you will know. I will know from here. If a stranger comes, you don't know his means of livelihood, and you don't tell the police, and after about 2 weeks, stealing is going on, you know you're the one endangering yourself. That's a kind of mentorship for community consciousness. Mm-hmm. But this superstructural mentorship of speech making, these youths are suffering, factually correct. Nobody's taking care of them, factually correct. After saying that,
what are you doing?
What are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, as we conclude this segment, it is to say that I'm happy about your optimism, and you are very strategic in terms of what programs we need to implement, engage in for a better future, however long it takes. What it means is that many of us must be involved, must get involved, be active emotional citizens, as it were.
Fact. I like the concept.
Active emotional citizens engaged in forming Nigerians for a better future, engaged in grooming the younger generation for a future that they themselves will relish, rather than just being in the cities and complaining. However, one of the challenges that we have, I mean, everyone who is engaged in these things, is that every so often you get scandals here, scandals here. There is a way that it just
keeps piling up and demoralizing. Perhaps.
Demoralizing, that's the word. Demoralizing and reducing the effectiveness of your work. Because the work you are doing, how effective it could have been, the children that listened to you a few days ago in that college, then somebody who might be your classmate or your generation, the next day they hear,
this is what he did.
This is what he did. Then it now begins to look as if maybe because you are not in that kind of position, that is why they are not hearing those negative things about you. So it's really how I wish that the people who are in positions of leadership, whether leadership in the church, leadership in government, leadership in schools, how I wish we know that leadership is a burden.
It is a burden, is a responsibility, and for every leadership position, there must be something called service delivery.
Yeah. So we would need to have another discussion to continue this, because I can see that you're very optimistic about the future for Nigeria and you are doing your best, and we can only pray that the good Lord will make these efforts bear fruits for a better society. Amen. Thanks for coming. Thank you.